Welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to thank you guys for getting me to 100 subscribers. That's really a blessing, and I wasn't even expecting it. So when I say God's good, He's good. So thank you guys. I just knew I wasn't the only one when I started this channel. I just knew I wasn't the only one who has been down the road I've been down, who has found and sought the Lord like I did. And so I just wanted to come out and find some of my people, some of my sisters, some of my brothers, start a network and speak to people, because even in my life, I know there's some people just like moi, and good thing I had a praying grandmother that I knew enough to call on the name of Jesus. Yes, thanks to my grandmother who introduced me to Jesus. And I watched him work in her life, through her life, all in it. And it was nothing but goodness, 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 goodness. Her and my grandfather, I'd say they did a great job. They instilled it in me. I lost it along the way, we all do. I tripped and fell and stayed on that damn ground for a few seconds. And, hey, it is what it is. We all have choices in life, and we take the choices that we want instead of listening and doing the right things. And so, I have been down those roads. But I want to start from my younger stage. I'm 53 years old. I'm a mother of 4, a grandmother of 1. I was raised by my grandmother, my father's mother. And her and my grandfather raised me. And I stayed with them until I sought adulthood and moved on out and got married. Yep. So, but during my childhood, it was pretty rough. I learned about abandonment at the age of 5 from my mom. Not so much from my dad, but from my mom. And that's how I got into the hands of my grandmother, But I learned from my mom as I grew up watching her, knowing I wanted to be nothing like that. But thank God. That's all I can say is thank God. My mom was a good lady. She had drug problems, but she was a good person. She never disappeared from our life. She just wasn't able to take care of me and my sister, and, she just gave us to my grandmother, which was a blessing. Some people go into foster care, some people get adopted, some are left struggling by themselves while their parents are doing God knows what. So it was a blessing that I had a grandmother that sought after me, took care of me, and raised me, and taught me the good things of life. And when I'm saying the good things of life, I mean how to live, right? How to trust God in everything that we do. So, I had a good upbringing. So I think, But not having your mom at the age of 5 and she in and out of your life, I can honestly say I never seen my mom throughout the weeks, maybe during school or whatever, but she would always come on Easter, Halloween, Christmas, whatever holiday it was. She would always make a point to come and bring me and my sister gifts, little things. She would get them from, they call it the Mission down here, but it's like a little place that helped the helpless. And she would always bring things, so we got stuffed animals and candies, and she'd bring us used clothes and different things. But of course, my grandmother wouldn't let us wear it or whatever. But some things we were able to salvage, but majority of the stuff went to the trash can, and she just replaced it with, taking us to go replace it shopping. So that's how she managed to do what she did. But now I understand why she did what she did, But yeah, I could always bet to see my mom on holidays. And my favorite one was Easter, because she used to bring us our own boiled eggs, a dozen boiled eggs for ourselves, me and my sister. And so I like boiled eggs right to this day. I love that protein. But yeah, Easter became my favorite because the eggs we could have, they never was taken away. The candy we could have, the Easter bunnies were always on Easter somehow new and not worn or used or dirty or whatever. So we were able to have more things on Easter. Christmas, you would think, but it was Easter. So Easter became my favorite little holiday. And so, yeah. And along the way, my dad, he popped in and out because it was his mother that raised me. So he was always in and out. He made sure that we were taken care of. I don't think he ever put child support on my mom or nothing like that. He never tried to keep us from her. They were like oil and water at first, but girl, in the end, when I hear the end of God's story, how he just, but yeah, they were, they were total opposites. Or maybe they were just the same and didn't know how to do it right. I don't know. But yeah, they come from two different worlds, if you ask me. But yeah, so I had parents, because my dad, he was involved in drugs as well. So, he was just a functioning addict, He worked. He lived by himself, but he was a functioning addict. I guess he had control over his stuff more than my mom did back then, but both of them had drug problems, and so they didn't raise their children. And, we used to go to my dad's house every now and then. He ended up getting married to someone who is still my mother right today. I think I was at the age of 10. My dad got married to my stepmom. And she's not my stepmother, she's my mother. And my birth mother understood the love that I had for my stepmom. So I can literally say my stepmom was my mother, because she's the one that raised me and taught me everything that I know, and I love her to death. But yeah, we would go visit and stuff, and then I think my sister went to stay with my dad. And I always stayed with my grandmother, so I never left. Once I went there, I never left. Never left to go back to stay with my parents. But, abandonment was an issue that I faced all the way through elementary. With both parents gone, you see them every now and then. They're just living their damn lives. Now that I'm older, I know what they were doing. It was just fuck-assing around, doing them, and left, my dad left his mother to take care of his responsibility. My mom had no accountability. She was just flopping here and there, doing her thing. And I'm sure it hurts. I know mothers and fathers don't wish to lose their children, but when it does happen, it's got to be some pain there, So not knowing then where my mom had come from, I just thought it was crazy. It was ludicrous, right? As children, we don't think about things that we think about now when we grow up. But, as a child, I felt abandoned by both of my parents, for real. Thank God for my grandmother and grandfather, my aunts and uncles. I was the oldest daughter, the oldest grandchild. So I had little ones after me that, I had to kind of be a role model for, and wait to hear later on, I kind of failed miserably with that, but, but, it was just family. They gave me the family sense. I've never really had a good relationship with my mom's family. I only had, really a couple of aunts that I socialized with, but one main particular one that I would hang out with, and me and her children are real close, and we're like sister cousins and, things of that nature. So it was a bittersweet time just growing up, period. There were times when my mom would let us go to her sister's house and we would be able to go over to my uncle's and her siblings' homes. And, it just, nothing, yeah, we had fun because we were kids and we found shit to do. But the things that took place were just, something I wasn't used to in my home. And so when I went outside on that side, it was like a whole nother world. So when I got to complaining about it all the time, I was just given a choice. Do you want to go or do you not? And I chose not to. Sometimes my sister chose to. So, it was like, okay. I just kind of stayed away. I was more reserved, more private, more quiet, because as a little kid, I had all these feelings going on inside and I had no one to talk to. Being raised by my grandmother, she didn't have time to sit and ask me how I was feeling or what's on my mind or this and that, She didn't. She was raising majority of her grandchildren, and the ones that wasn't living with her she was over there babysitting half of the time, so, and she worked and she sewed and she did lots of things. She ministered, she just had a lot of hats that she wore. And so she didn't have time to just consider taking us one by one and asking us how we feel and different things that we do with our children. Because I know I damn sure did with mine. I knew all the things not to do from experience. So my parenting was a little bit different a whole lot of different than where I came from. So, I asked my children those questions. I sat down and discussed them. I sat and did homework with them. I made sure they understood things. I engaged more. My parents didn't care about engaging in nothing concerning their kids. They were living their life. I get it. It's over with. But, that's where I come from. And I always felt abandonment up until the moments that they actually passed. And simply because they had, even as growing up and becoming, going into junior high and high school and stuff, my dad has always been in and out. But during the school years, nothing, So with that baggage from feeling the way I felt about my parents and never being able to express to anyone or get it out, of course, I was stuffing myself with all that junk, all that toxin, And I think in junior high, I started asking God, like, why is this happening? Why is this going on? This is what I have to go through, Why can't I have parents like my cousins? Or why my mom and dad can't be them? I had all those questions growing up. There were moments when I was ashamed of my parents. There were moments in junior high where I dread for the bus to go around because my mom hung out at the store. The local stores we have in the hood. She would hang out there. And the bus had to go around there to pick up people. And they knew who our mom was. And they would tease us. Kids are cruel. They would tease us and all that. And my sister would fight. I would just bend down or turn the other way and just be like, ugh. I've had a few scuffles and buffles about it, but, for the most part, I just learned how to just ignore it. And I just prayed that every time we turned that corner, she wasn't there. And majority of the time, she stopped being there, but she still would be there at moments. So, I got a little bit of what I prayed for, but I didn't want the bull crap, like, to be teased about your parents and you're just trying to go home from school. You've already had a rough day at school. I probably had a few fights at school and everything like that, and I'm just ready to go, And then I got to endure the shit on the bus too. Oh my God. So I had uncles and aunts who were married who If my uncles, their wives, I was very close to at times. And there was one uncle that his wife, I'm still good friends with. They're not even married anymore, and we're still close. I call her my angel. She is my angel. Her and my stepmom were big impacts on my life coming up, as well as my grandmother. But it's like after a certain age, my grandmother kind of like, okay, you got it made with it, go for it, So, gave her a little pressure off because then she had others to take care of after me, which was my sister, my other cousins, and stuff like that. Her kids, because every now and then they come back home. And so, it was just always people there. It was always love. It was always warmth at my grandmother's, you know. And I can't complain about it. I miss it right to this day, because we lost track of that when she fell sick, but I miss it right to this day. That family unity that we used to have back in the day, that's what I had in my grandmother's on my dad's side. But on my mom's side, I just never felt that. I was very estranged from these people, They never bothered to try to reach out as much, and I didn't either, but I respected them all. I still do respect each and every one of them that are still here. Although I don't have good relationships with them, and I love them, and, it is what it is. Yeah. But, yeah, junior high, I used to get teased. Never got teased for my dad being on drugs. He kind of kept a low profile. He wasn't all hanging out and shit. So, never had to worry about that, but I had to worry about him going home and starting crap with my stepmom. And, my dad was very abusive, he was, what do they say, a narcissist these days. That would be my dad. He was just always right. And sometimes he put his hands on his women for standing up for themselves. And, so I've seen that type of abuse growing up. And, I didn't see all this at my grandmother's house, so I knew it was a better life. I knew that when I see my grandmother and my grandfather and they taking us to church and praying, I knew there was something better than what I seen in my parents' behavior in front of me when they have time to spend with me. I've seen where I go to, supposed to be going to spend time with my mom, but she'd take me to her sister's house so I can go play with my cousins, and she'd jet the hell off for the whole entire weekend. Never seen her ass no more. Or go to my dad's and he's, okay, we get to buy this, we go out to eat and everything, but then you and my stepmom get in an argument and you're whooping her ass. Things like that. Very, very toxic. Go home. My grandmother always cooked. Never missed a meal. 3 meals a day, snacks. Ate as much as we want. She fed everyone. She fed the whole neighborhood. No one could come in there and not need anything and she not give it. That's the type of grandmother I had. Full of love, kindness, and just generosity was 100. People look at me today and I say I'm my grandmother, because I'll give the last. If I had $5 and I need it for gas and I know that you need it, I'm going to give it to you. And I'll say, well, Lord, they needed it more than me. And somehow God will make a way. Somebody come across my path or something to happen. And I'll get my gas. But growing up, seeing 3 different lifestyles. Because like I said, my mom was all over the place, but my dad was stable, but both of them were addicts. Toxic. My mom had men to beat her. There was many times my grandmother would take me to the hospital to see her. And my baby sister never got to go, but as the oldest, I would go. We would make sure she was okay, and I had to endure seeing men constantly beating on her, damn near killing her, but she didn't stop the lifestyle. So seeing that growing up, and after a while, when I became a teenager, like 16, I believe, or a little bit towards 15, 16, one of them. But I said, okay, enough is enough. I started speaking out, not hiding my feelings, and I was rude with it, disrespectful. Stopped going to my dad's because I'm like, man, I don't have time for this, you know. Like, nah. So I just stayed home. Didn't get into nothing but trouble. Always walking the streets of the hood, you know. But thank God for my aunt. When I said that, we're still close today. Thank God for her because she started programs in the neighborhood, Girl Scouts and Brownies and softball and just different things. And I was right there. So I, got into it. Other kids in the neighborhood got into it, and we had people that, cared about us. They knew about our parents. They knew our situations, but it was like sort of like a YMCA like they have back in this day. But it was more personal, And we just bonded a relationship, and she just became my angel. She's always wanted the best for me, regardless of what I've done. She's forgiven me. I even stole from her one time, listening to one of my friends to steal one of her checks, And yeah, she was mad. I think I was in, how they sell that candy at class. So my friend was like, just get her check and write the amount of the candy and we ate it all, I didn't know how to do the check thing. My friend filled it out or whatever, but I was to blame because I'm the one who stole it, and she was very upset with me for a couple of years. We didn't talk, but, God mended that relationship back together again, thank God, and, I never took it for granted again. So I learned, and so throughout my life, I learned that, things didn't have to be as bad as they looked or seemed to be. That if we just trust in Jesus, He will lead us through. So I knew this all along, And I began to lean on it. I was real heavy in church growing up, Of course, I'm staying with my grandmother. You can't miss it. We was there. She would choir rehearsal on Mondays, Tuesday, Usher board, Wednesday, Bible study, Thursday, something. Maybe we get out Friday, revival, Saturday, revival, Sunday, church all day. Oh my God, you're talking about Jesus being poured into me. So I knew better. But God has always been poured into me. And I never forgot His word. I stepped away, but I never forgot His word. But I just want to go back to let you know that I was raised with a lot of grudges, holding a lot of grudges. So I grew up an angry black woman, as they call it today, but I was an angry little girl, black girl, full of anger, with nobody there to ask me a damn question because nobody either knew to ask their children any questions. Children were supposed to stay in their place. When grown-ups was around, we exit the room. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. I say that shit still today. I'm very respectable. Very kind. But my head was warped. I was lukewarm. Sometimes I get hot, sometimes I get cold. I was facing that world and facing the right way, the wrong way. I was tugging with a whole lot of things. I was exposed to a whole lot of things at an early age. Raped by 2 uncles on each side. Yeah, imagine that. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine that. Being scarred. I can remember at the age of 15, my mom's brother molested me, and I went home and I told my grandmother. And she filed charges, and I can remember going to court with my grandmother. We was on one side, and my mom came to court with her siblings, and they sat on her brother's side. No, he raped me. I'm young. I'm 15. And you would think my mom would come to court and be on my side. Even her stupid ass siblings. You know what I'm saying? And come to find out he was raping everybody in the family, you know? Like they took up for his wrong. And as a child, that hurt. So that put more strain on my relationship on my mom's side. To me, they were weirdos. And I couldn't believe that they would treat me that way. I had to seek counseling after that. I questioned my grandmother numbers of times. Like, that broke me inside. You know? That broke me down. And then to be raped by my aunt's husband, and she still be with him, I had to live with that. You know? It wasn't until I went to prison where I wrote my aunt a letter and just expressed myself to her. But I was grown by then. But we've never really just fully talked about it to this day. You know, but I've forgiven and everything, and he's gone to heaven or wherever he's gone. And, you know, it is what it is. You know, but I'm saying as a child, my brain was, you know, excuse my French, but my life and my young brain was just fucked up. I wanted to escape. I wanted to get out. I had my grandfather telling me, hey, those are your parents. If they ever need anything, you always be there. And I took that to heart, and I did that till they went to heaven or wherever they went. You know, I did that. Although my parents did not raise me, I took care of both of my parents. Both. Until they died. And it was my grandfather that put that in me to do that. Had he not told me, I probably would have said, fuck it. They ain't do nothing for me. What the hell I look like taking care of them now that they down and out? Are they sick? Are you crazy? What you do for me? You know? But, you know, I did that. So imagine me becoming a young woman, because I'm going to stop right here, but just imagine me going through all that in my childhood, you know, and going through that with my feelings. And at that time, like I said, no one was asking me anything, so I'm trying to figure it out in my head. Like I go to church all the time, so I'm wondering, okay, well, Lord, when are you going to rescue me from my problems? You know, I'm a kid. I'm not understanding, but I got all this grouped up in me and just, So when I'm becoming 18, whoa. We'll get into that later. But until then, I just want to say thanks for 100 subscribers, and y'all continue to keep listening to me. And surely I know that I'm not the only one in this world that is like myself. So, hey, y'all join in with me and let me know. Until I talk to y'all again, stay blessed.